There's a sentence that most people have heard so many times, it stopped feeling like an opinion and started feeling like a fact. Money can't buy happiness. And the version before that, older, darker, says something worse. Money is the root of all evil. I want to talk about these two ideas today, not to dismiss them entirely. There's something real in both of them, a kernel of truth that got wrapped in so many layers of repetition that the truth and the distortion became impossible to separate. But I want to look at the data, real data. And I want to look at what these beliefs actually do to people who hold them, not philosophically, but practically. Because I think money is evil is one of the most quietly destructive things a person can believe. Not because it makes you immoral, because it makes wealth feel like something you shouldn't want. And when you believe you shouldn't want something, when wanting it carries a tinge of guilt or shame, you don't build it, you avoid it. You unconsciously sabotage the moments when it starts to come, and then you wonder why you never get ahead. I'll also tell you something personal today. I grew up around this belief. Not in a dramatic religious way. Nobody sat me down and told me rich people were sinners. But the cultural air I breathed carried the message. Wanting too much money is a character flaw. Contentment is virtuous. Ambition, especially financial ambition, is slightly suspect. I absorbed it, and it shaped my decisions for years before I even knew it was there. Today, I want to pull it apart, carefully, with actual numbers. And as always, nothing here is financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a 38-year-old dad thinking out loud. Take what's useful. Let's start with the origin. The love of money is the root of all evil. That's the actual quote from the Bible, the first letter to Timothy. Not money is the root of all evil. The love of money, the obsession with it, the idolization of it above everything else. That's a meaningful distinction. The original statement isn't condemning the accumulation of resources. It's condemning a specific relationship with money, one where money becomes the end rather than the means, where you sacrifice the things that actually matter, relationships, integrity, values, on the altar of more. That warning is legitimate. That warning describes something real and destructive. But somewhere between the original text and the cultural version most of us absorbed, the nuance collapsed. The love of money is the root of all evil became, money is the root of all evil became, money is bad became, wanting money is bad became, people who focus on money are bad people. And that final version, which has no basis in the original, is the one that operates in millions of people's financial decision-making. There's also a cultural layer that's separate from the religious one. In many working-class and middle-class cultures, and I include mine here, there's a specific suspicion of wealth. Not hatred exactly, more like distrust. Rich people are assumed, by default, to have compromised something to get there. They cheated somehow. They stepped on someone. They were lucky in ways that had nothing to do with merit. Or they simply inherited it, which means they didn't earn it, and therefore don't fully deserve it. The corollary of this is that honest people, good people, people who didn't cheat and didn't get lucky, naturally stay at a moderate level. Financial modesty is moral modesty. Not getting too far ahead is a sign that you played fair. I am not exaggerating this. I heard versions of it throughout my childhood. Not in explicit statements, again, it was ambient. It was the tone in which certain things were said. The mild contempt that crept into conversations about wealthy people. The way, "he's doing well," could be said with admiration or with suspicion, depending on who was speaking. And I absorbed it. And it sat inside my operating system for years, invisible, shaping what I felt was available to me. There's also something specific that happens to money conversations in these cultural environments that I think is worth naming. Wealth became something you talked about in the negative. You could complain about not having enough. That was acceptable, even expected. Shared financial stress is a form of social bonding. It creates solidarity. We're all in the same boat is a comfortable narrative when the boat is modest. But expressing ambition, talking about wanting more, specifically significantly more than the people around you, that violated an unwritten social rule. Because ambition in this framing implies dissatisfaction with what the community has. It implies you think you deserve more than the baseline, and that's a form of rejection of the shared identity. So the ambition gets suppressed. Not killed, it doesn't die, but it goes underground. It becomes private. And private ambitions that never get spoken, never get planned, never get acted on systematically. They just exist as a vague feeling that things could be different, without any real structure for making them different. That gap between the private want and the complete absence of a plan to reach it is where most people's financial lives get stuck. Not because they're lazy, not because they lack the capacity, because the belief system they inherited made it impossible to want the thing out loud. And you can't build towards something you can't say you want. Okay, now let's look at what actually happens when you study money and happiness rigorously. Because this has been studied extensively, and the results are more complicated and more interesting than either money can't buy happiness or money buys everything. There are two large, well-known studies that produce results so different from each other that they've generated serious academic debate. And I think the contrast between them is worth sitting with. The first is the World Happiness Report, an annual global survey conducted in collaboration with the United Nations. It asks people in countries around the world to evaluate their life satisfaction on a scale from 0 to 10. The top 10 countries in recent years consistently look something like this: Finland, Denmark, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Australia, Canada. Look at that list carefully. Every single country on it is wealthy. Every single one has high GDP per capita, strong social safety nets, universal health care, and robust public services. The correlation between national wealth and reported life satisfaction in this study is striking. Not perfect, there are outliers. But the pattern is clear enough that it's impossible to dismiss. Rich countries, on average, have happier populations. And the numbers back this up. Finland, number 1 for multiple consecutive years, has a GDP per capita of around $50,000. Denmark, Iceland, Norway, all above $60,000. The United States, for comparison, sits around $80,000 GDP per capita and ranks around 23rd. Higher income, lower ranking, which is interesting and we'll come back to. But the bottom of the happiness rankings tells an equally clear story. Countries with the lowest life satisfaction scores, Afghanistan, Lebanon, Sierra Leone, Zimbabwe, are also among the world's poorest. The correlation is not perfect, but it is real and significant. Now, the second study. The Ipsos Global Happiness Report surveys a similar question. Are you happy? But across a different set of countries and with a different methodology. And the top of that list looks completely different. In recent years, Indonesia consistently sits at the very top, or near it. Then India, Mexico, Brazil, South Africa. These are not wealthy countries by conventional measures. Indonesia's GDP per capita is around $4,500, roughly 1/10 of Norway's. And yet Indonesians, in this survey, report higher happiness than people in Norway, Denmark, or Finland. So now we have a real contradiction. Study 1 says, wealthy countries are happiest. Study 2 says, middle-income countries report higher happiness than wealthy ones. Both studies are serious. Both have large sample sizes. Both are conducted by credible organizations. How do you reconcile them? The key is in what each study is actually measuring. The World Happiness Report measures life evaluation. When you step back and think about your life as a whole, how would you rate it? This is a reflective, cognitive kind of question. It captures long-term satisfaction with conditions: security, opportunity, stability, health, freedom. The Ipsos report measures moment-to-moment emotional experience. Do you feel happy right now, or in general? This captures something different. Daily mood, social connection, present moment contentment. And those two things, life evaluation and present moment happiness, are different. They can point in different directions for the same person. Someone in Indonesia might experience high daily joy, strong family connections, community bonds, present moment pleasure in relatively simple things, while also experiencing real economic anxiety, limited healthcare access, uncertain future planning. Someone in Denmark might report high satisfaction with their life as a whole, security, opportunity, systems that reliably work, while experiencing moderate day-to-day emotional intensity, a quieter kind of happiness, more stable, less effusive. Neither experience is better in any absolute sense. They're measuring different things. What this means is that the question, does money make you happy, doesn't have a single answer. It depends on what kind of happiness you're talking about, and over what time horizon. But here's the finding that I think is most practically important, the one that most directly challenges the money won't make you happier narrative. An American researcher named Matthew Killingsworth ran a large-scale study tracking people's moment-to-moment emotional experience using a smartphone app, asking them throughout their day how they were feeling and correlating that with their income. His finding? Emotional well-being continues to rise with income, even at high income levels. He found no ceiling, or at least not one he could identify in his data. This directly contradicted an earlier, famous study by Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman, which had suggested that emotional well-being stopped improving beyond roughly $75,000 per year in the United States. That $75,000 figure had become one of the most cited statistics in popular psychology. You only need $75,000 to be happy. It appeared in TED Talks, books, magazine articles, and it was, at minimum, significantly oversimplified. When Killingsworth and Kahneman actually collaborated to reconcile their conflicting results, what they found was more nuanced. For most people, happiness does continue to rise with income throughout the income range they studied. For a subset of people, those already experiencing significant unhappiness, often linked to factors like grief or depression, more money above a certain point doesn't help as much. In other words, money doesn't automatically produce happiness. But the absence of financial security is a significant source of unhappiness. And more financial stability, more than the cultural "you just need enough" narrative suggests, continues to improve how people feel. What does this mean practically? It means the belief that money won't make you happier is, for most people, at most income levels, empirically incorrect. More specifically, more financial security, more options, more runway between yourself and the next crisis. These things improve well-being in measurable ways. Not because money is the source of happiness, but because financial stress is a genuine source of unhappiness. And reducing genuine sources of unhappiness improves happiness. That's not a complicated finding, but it directly contradicts the cultural belief that financial ambition is somehow spiritually or morally inferior to contentment. And it means that the guilt some people feel when they want more, the sense that wanting financial security is greedy or suspect, is not just culturally wrong, it's factually wrong. Here's what I've come to believe about money after thinking about this for a long time. Money is a tool. Not a simple tool, not a neutral tool, but a tool. A hammer can build a house or break a window. The hammer is not evil. The hammer is not good. It does what the person holding it does with it. Money works similarly. It amplifies. Whatever you are, generous or selfish, community-minded or isolated, constructive or destructive, money amplifies it. A generous person with more money is more generous. A selfish person with more money is more selfish. The money didn't create the quality. It amplified what was already there. I think the "money is evil" belief gets this backwards. It treats money as something that corrupts, as if acquiring it inevitably transforms you into something worse than you were, as if the accumulation process itself degrades character. And in some cases, that's a description of something real. Some people do pursue money in ways that damage their character and the people around them. That exists. But it's not the money doing the corrupting. It's the specific relationship with money, the one the original quote warned about, the worship of it, the prioritization of it above everything else. A person building financial independence with a clear purpose, providing for their family, buying time, creating freedom, is not doing the thing the quote warns about. They're using a tool for a legitimate purpose, and calling that evil, or even suspicious, is a category error that costs people enormously. Here's another way to think about it. What is money, functionally, in a modern life? It's time. Every unit of money represents some quantity of your time and energy that you exchanged for it. When you spend money, you're spending stored time. When you save and invest money, you're storing time for later use. Financial independence, FIRE, the concept I've talked about before, is really just the point at which you have enough stored time that you don't need to keep trading present time for more. Is time evil? Is wanting more of your own time evil? Is wanting the freedom to decide how your hours and days are spent, rather than having them decided by financial necessity, a character flaw? Or is it one of the most responsible things I can do for the people who depend on me? Is getting ahead something that happens at someone else's expense? Or is building real financial independence, investing in broad market funds, building assets over time, actually one of the more benign and constructive things a person can do? When I ask those questions and actually think about them, rather than letting the cultural default answer them, the answers are pretty clear. Money is a tool. Security is a legitimate goal. Building wealth through patient, honest work is not morally suspect. And wanting those things, working toward them, protecting the gap that makes them possible, is not a character flaw. It is responsibility. Specifically and precisely. Responsibility to the people who depend on you, and to the future version of yourself who will thank you for what you chose to build right now. I want to end with something that I wish someone had said to me earlier. It is okay to want financial security. It is okay to want more than enough. It is okay to want the freedom that comes from not being financially dependent on the next month's income. These wants are not moral failures. They are not evidence that you've compromised something or that money has corrupted your values. They are human. They are responsible. And for anyone supporting a family, anyone whose choices affect the stability of people they love, they are arguably obligatory. The data I looked at today tells a consistent story. Financial security improves well-being. Not completely, not in isolation from other factors, but measurably and significantly. The countries with the highest life satisfaction are, without exception, countries with strong economic foundations and systems that provide financial security to their populations. The belief that money doesn't matter, or that wanting it is suspect, is not supported by the evidence. It's a cultural story, useful in some ways, genuinely distorted in others. And like all distorted cultural stories, it's worth examining. Not to throw it away entirely. There's something real in "don't worship money." There's something real in "money alone won't complete you." But the version that says wanting financial freedom is wrong, that one you can put down, because it was never yours to carry in the first place. Someone else put it there, and you can choose to set it down.